It's IB Countdown to Kickoff. The gang's all here. Vince, Jesse, Sean, as we roll into SC week. Southern Cal, Notre Dame, USC, big rivalry game. I don't know about you guys, but like after this week that we've come out of, it's been like a little, even though this is, like I said, it's the rivalry. It's been a little bit hard to kind of get fired up for this. It seems like we've been dwelling on all these things from it hasn't even been a week ago with the debacle in Louisville.
So many things have happened over this past week. Some personal, some Notre Dame wise. Like there's no excitement for me. Like it just feels like as you started mentioning like USC Notre Dame was like wah, wah. Like I don't. This is usually my favorite week of the season. Like I love USC week. Like that is the truest, best rivalry in my opinion in college football. Like I love this rivalry, everything about it, how it started, how it's continued. I love this rivalry. I love it. I've got family that went to USC. I just love this rivalry so much. And this year it's just kind of because of what happened at Louisville. And I mean, it's just kind of like, I don't know. Now, this is an awesome opportunity to kind of get some of that excitement back for Notre Dame football. But like going into it, I don't know, man. I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah, Vince, you said a lot of stuff there. And I felt like that earlier in the week about this game. I was like, man, how excited can I really be? Because, this Louisville loss hurt on a couple levels. First, you get your second loss. There's no more playoff for me, right? So now you got to recalibrate your expectations, your best case scenario, and then you have to accept those, right? Like it's not only one thing to think about them, but you have to accept them as a fan. So that took a little bit. And then when I accepted about, what are some of the potential goals that still can be met this season, I was like, what better way to start that than USC week? And I got fired up all over again in a span of like 30 minutes, right? Because I'm like you, USC week growing up was my favorite game in the entire season. And not that all the other games didn't matter, but like, man, if they could just beat USC, I would like that. That erases a lot of stuff for me personally as a fan, right? And I told the story of like how my buddies and I would always find tickets. We would scout for tickets. Like I would do anything possible to try to go to the USC games because there was just so much excitement around it. The campus was buzzing, everything. And so I'm all in on this week, and I'm excited for the opportunity to kind of switch the season around and get on a good note, be at 6-2 with 2 bye weeks and 4 games left. And it's a very manageable 4 games, but this is the turning point in the season. We either burn the ship down after this game or we feel really confident about what the goals are, going forward.
I was trying to remember, so the home USC games are odd numbered years. So your first USC game, you were pretty young. It was either 01 or 03. Because I remember our friends Eric and Aileen came in to town. Yeah. I can't remember if it was 01 or 03 that would have been your first game, but it was one of those two. So and then you were there.
I was definitely there for Bush Push.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's always they're always memorable, and it's like this is the right time of year. The weather's turning and everything
that's
else.
The best part.
Yeah, it's
fall football.
Right time of year. Right time.
Yeah,
of year.
And it's we'll get into the elements and all that stuff later, but like this is fall. True. Like in the last week, this is fall, right? I mean, what was it about a week and a half ago? It was like 85 and humid and nasty, and then about midweek, it was like. Nope, fall's here. Like it dropped like 30, 40 degrees and it was cold. I was wearing a winter hat at a soccer game. Like it was cold.
It was when we left for California, it was like 80s, 83, 84.
Yes.
And then we got back this morning. We landed, it was like 57, 58. And it was like a 30-degree difference across like 7 or 8 days, really.
Yeah, it falls here officially. There's no doubt about that.
Well, when you think back to last week's game, I mean, that's of course the buzzkill on this entire season. And you're right. Like if this season is going to be anything, it starts with USC. Like they've pretty much got to win this game. It's every game is do or die essentially at this point. What's the most disconcerting thing you guys saw in last week's loss to Louisville?
Well, that's easy for me. It was the play of the offensive line. That was by far the most disconcerting thing because, and again, it's cliche for football, but everything starts up front, right? And they couldn't get anything going offensively. And I think a large part of that was due to the play of the offensive line. Now, some of that was self-imposed by the coaches by doing that stupid rotation that they tried to do at the last second, which was dumb.
I don't mean to cut you off,
Nope,
but correct
please do.
me if I'm wrong, because Marcus Freeman in his Zoom today, he was asked if they're going to keep doing it this week. He mentioned that Pat Coogan was kind of banged up last week and was not able to practice throughout the week. He never said that after the game Saturday or earlier this week, right? Like, this is the first we've heard that, I think.
Yeah.
He says that was part of the reason
cover
that
up.
They did that.
It's a cover up. I don't like it. It's a
Let
cover
him know,
up.
Vince.
I mean, if he was really injured, then why did he only not play like 15 snaps? You know what I mean? Like, if he was injured, then start Billy Schrauth in his spot. Like, start him, play him the whole time. Like, if he's quote unquote earned it in practice, and I believe that was also said in the press conference, then let him start. Like, bringing him in for a series at one position and then put him in for another series at another position, and like, it's just, I don't know. The whole thing was jacked up. So my issue with the team, the most disconcerting thing was this time last week, we were talking about, the offensive line play against Duke was hopefully a one-off. Like, man, they played so well against Ohio State. We've seen them. They've gotten better and better each week. And okay, this is going to be a one-off, hopefully, for the offensive line. Well, now 2 weeks in a row, very subpar offensive line play by all 7 linemen that played. And now, like, is it a trend? Like,
don't forget those tight ends either.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. The play up front was terrible. It was terrible. So that's the most disconcerting thing for me.
Vince stole a good amount of my ammunition, so I'm trying to.
You got to jump on me, man.
No, I got. So to me, the most disconcerting thing was the offense, and it falls into 2 categories. One was the offensive line. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because Vince just talked about it and made a lot of good points. But the play calling to me was a big factor. I know Marcus Freeman wants to say execution, but Marcus Freeman, he needs a healthy dose of being called out, I think. And this week is kind of how I looked at that. Marcus Freeman needed to be called out on some of his stuff because I'm just a little tired. I love Marcus Freeman, right? But I'm just a little tired of not quite owning up to kind of blaring obvious things that are in your face. And I know it's a fine line of not throwing, certain people under the bus, your offensive coordinator and stuff like that. But it's still okay to come out and say, yeah, like we might have been this or we might have been that a little bit too much this game. And that ultimately combined to our, downfall. It just can't be execution after execution after execution. There's got to be more to it. So that was also played into my concerning thing that I saw as well.
There's too much evidence to say it was more than just execution, and predictability is the thing. And that's the most disconcerting thing for me, kind of playing into a little bit of what both you guys are saying is just far too predictable based on how they lined up offensively. Louisville, it was like Louisville knew what the play was half the time before it was ever coming. And a big part of it was how Notre Dame tipped things off just with the way they lined up. Jesse, do you have the information that you gave us earlier this week on under center versus shotgun and kind of how easy, basically, like the tells were not hard to find based on how they lined up. Do you have it ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay,
Vince, I don't know if you've seen this, heard about this, watched this.
Did you come up with this on your own?
The legend of the spreadsheet. He tracked every play.
Wow.
Under center, shotgun,
Did you
personnel.
work this week or what?
The whole thing.
So I stopped in the second half right before like those last 2 turnovers. I thought those were, miscellaneous. But yeah, there was like 6 drives, first half, 6 drives, second half. And just to give like a quick review for maybe some people who didn't see it earlier in the week, I just tracked personnel. And then the S or C next to it means shotgun or center, run or pass play. And then I was looking at motion, pre-snap motion, how many players were in the box, and then what was the result of the play. And then I kind of found some numbers that I thought were important and kind of told a lot of the story for Notre Dame's lack of offensive success this past week. So, yeah, here was kind of the breakdown. Notre Dame ran 55 plays that I tracked. Pre-snap motion was only 18%. Plays under center, and every time they went under center, it was with multiple tight ends, whether that was 12, 13, 14, or I think there's a 2-back set one of the times. And then the run percentage under center was 82%, right? So out of the 11 plays they ran under center, they ran 9 out of those. The net gain on those run plays under center was basically 2 yards or 1.9. And every time they were under center, there was an average of 8.6 players in the box. And I actually felt like that number I was a little bit more generous. That number could actually be maybe a little bit closer to 9, if we're being honest. And then I also looked at how many plays were out of shotgun. And there was 75% plays in shotgun, so 44 out of the 55.
75% pass plays.
Yeah, sorry, 75% pass plays out of shotgun, and only 25% run plays out of shotgun. So the main thing was here.
It's not hard if you're Louisville. Okay, we're going to go under center. 82% of the time, they ran the ball when Sam Hartman was under center. Okay, we're going to go shotgun. 75% of the time, they threw the ball out of shotgun. I mean, those are pretty easy tendencies to find, Vince. And Louisville played defensively like they knew what was coming just based on how they lined up. And
well, not only that,
to see why,
but you didn't do anything to try to, like, you were in shotgun and you were under center, and then you didn't really do much in terms of motion game or trying to like throw different looks out there. It was coming out in one look and just running it like straight to your tendencies. There was no trying to put a window dressing on it, anything. It was just stale, stagnant, in your face. Here's what we're doing. And Louisville knew that, I felt like.
No, you're 100% accurate, and to see the numbers like that, it wow. Like I don't even know what to say, because you're 100% accurate with it, and it is. I mean, if you're telling me that something's going to happen 82% of the time, I'm selling out for that.
Yeah,
and that just makes sense. That just makes sense to me. Okay, well, if it's 82% of the time, then 18% of the time, maybe I get burned, but maybe it doesn't work. And maybe
if you're playing your odds, I'll take winning 82% of the time, especially if we're gambling.
And the other part of that is, even like the 18% of the time when they ran the ball, it was most of the time probably Audric Estime on the field in those cases, would be my guess.
And it was right up the gut.
But yeah,
right up the gut. Oh, and that was the last thing I looked at too, Vince, was Jeremiah Love had 8 instances when he touched the ball, whether that was a run or catching like a screen out of the backfield. He was averaging 7.6 yards every time he touches the ball, yet you're so concerned about running Audric Estime up the middle under center every short yard down situation. Let's just get a little bit more creative with the guy who's averaging 7.5 yards a pop in this game.
And look, 3rd and 1, you're going to put Jabron Payne in there, and you're going to put Sam Hartman under center. Tell me who didn't know that a run play was coming, or the kind of run play that was going to come. It was
basically the exact same thing against that touchdown that he got against USC, right? Ohio State. Once you showed that he was going to come in on a short down situation, it was a run.
But the other thing is, when they're going under center, not only are they going under center, but not looking in depth at all that data that you put together. Yeah, it's probably get either 12 or 13 personnel, which means just by the formation that you're putting on the field, you're naturally bringing more guys into the box and making it harder to run between the tackles, which is almost all that they decided to do in those situations. It's just, I don't know. I guess we're probably past it at this point. But.
Well, but are we? I think that's the biggest question. Are we past it?
No, because it's the biggest thing that it's going to determine this game against USC. Is the offense going to do enough to be more dynamic? Because you need the points to beat USC this week.
And look, USC's defense is not as good as the Louisville defense, but you can make an average defense better than average when you have tendencies like that.
Well, and that's the thing, because Louisville's defense was not as good as the Duke's defense, but they played like world beaters last week.
They basically did exactly what Duke did, and it ended up working out for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, USC would be stupid not to copy the game plan, right? Because again, they're not a very talented defense. They're not very well coached. So who knows what they're going to do? But, you have to take advantage of this defense, which means the play calling needs to be creative. And the players do need to execute. They need to execute. Like the offensive line played terrible, right? There were times when the receivers played terrible. There were times when Sam Hartman played terrible. There is a level of execution that needs to take place.
Right.
But you also need to put your players in the best, possible scenario to succeed.
Right.
Like Marcus Freeman isn't wrong. It was a cocktail of players. Like the offensive line miscues were execution, right? Like missing blocks.
Absolutely.
That stuff. But that was like 25-30% of the overall picture of, like you said, just not calling the right plays and putting your team in the right situation.
Right.
Agreed.
The offensive line obviously needed to play better, but there were also times, again, because of the way Notre Dame lined up and because of the fact that they were seeing 8 and 9 men on the other side, they were just simply outnumbered in the box. Like there were plays where guys were making blocks, but there were just too many unaccounted for guys who were running free, like on that play by Jabron Payne, trying to, like is just one of the examples. So that's probably my biggest concern, is that because of USC's prolific offense, that Marcus Freeman, being that defensive-minded guy, my concern is he's going to try to keep the points down by sticking with that same game plan, trying to grind out. And it's like, we've just got to get these yards on the ground because this is who we are. Well, again, if USC is showing 8 and 9 in the box, just like Louisville did and like Duke did, Freeman said it himself. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And unfortunately, that's what we saw so much of last week, was just that, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, but never seeing it come to fruition.
Right. And I wonder, and this is just me thinking out loud, and I don't know, I have so many conversations throughout the day, but like, I can't remember if we discussed it on the show or if it was just an in-passing conversation with somebody else. I don't know. But the mentality that you just mentioned about Marcus Freeman, and he's been very open about that's who he wants to be, right? And it's frustrating, but like, that's not who Jared Parker was the first 4 games. Like that was clearly not the mentality for the offensive game plan, but it feels like that mentality has shifted to that.
Yep.
So is it Jared Parker being the issue, or is it an overarching issue with the head coach saying, look, this is how I need you to call the game? You know what I mean? So like,
no, absolutely. Because we had guys, when we were talking about this earlier in the week, we're not saying that Marcus Freeman is the play caller, but Marcus Freeman as the head coach has complete say during the week when they're putting together the game plan, telling Jared Parker, this is the kind of game plan that I want. So regardless of who the offensive coordinator is, the head coach still has final say.
If you're only given, these plays in a box to call, right? Like that's your play card right there. That's what you have. Now, can you be a little bit more creative with those plays and the timing of what you call them, and maybe more play action out of under center, things of that nature? Yes. I'm not taking the blame off of Jared Parker. But what I am saying is, if you're only given these X amount of plays that you're allowed to call, then, there's blame to go around. How about that? So.
Well, it is another night game. It is a 4th consecutive team that is undefeated and ranked that Notre Dame will play. It's the Notre Dame USC rivalry, 94th meeting between these two. Notre Dame leads the series 59-38 and 5. Irish have actually won 5 straight at home over the Trojans, going back to 2015, something that I didn't realize until I saw some of the notes this week. So Marcus Freeman was able to get Notre Dame to respond twice last year after losses to Marshall and Stanford. Do you guys believe that he can do it again now against their biggest rival here in a big stage going into the bye week?
I do believe that Marcus Freeman can do it again. And I would say, after the Ohio State game, he responded in a way of, it didn't look pretty, but they still got to win in a tough environment on the road. And now they're finally coming back home after 2 tough road games. I think this offense and Sam Hartman are just a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more fluid at home. I don't know what it is. Notre Dame is obviously a really good team at home. And I just think that, to me, Notre Dame's defense, compared to USC's defense, is enough of a gap to bridge between USC's offense and Notre Dame's offense. And so I just think that as long as Notre Dame can stay disciplined, right? Because we still notice some of the stupid penalties as well, holding them back. Like, I think as long as they stay disciplined, they're going to win this game, and I feel confident about it.
I am not as confident as Sir Jesse. If they would have ended up squeaking out a win against Louisville or beating them in the way that I thought that they should beat them, then yes, I would have a lot more confidence. The problem is right now, if this was game 5, I would have a lot of confidence that they were going to beat USC, because that means they're coming off that 4-game stretch of 40-plus points, the whole deal, right? I would have a lot more confidence. The problem with this game for me right now is that in order to beat USC, you've got to win a shootout. You've got to outscore them. And I know that's very John Madden, like, well, the team that scores more points is going to win. Yeah, I get it. But, you need to go toe-to-toe with an offense that can put up a boatload of points against good defenses. Now, I have a lot of faith in Al Golden's defense. I do, but Caleb Williams is going to put up points. We can all agree on that. He's going to score.
He's going to score. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the elements are. He's going to score the football. And so Notre Dame needs to score the football. They scored 55 points in 3 games. I mean, that's my biggest hang-up right now. Do they have the ability to score a bunch of points? Of course they do. We've seen it. Okay? But will they?
But there has to be a drastic shift to what they were doing earlier. And again, my concern is just because of what you outlined, that Marcus Freeman will go the other way on this and stick with this conservative approach to try to keep the points down as much as possible.
And you can't win
rather
that game
than going all in on trying to outscore USC.
If that's the game plan going in, you've lost before the game starts.
I think so too.
That's how I feel. I have no faith that if that's the game plan, they're going to win.
I think so too. Would it salvage the season if they're able to beat USC?
I think it's a huge stepping stone along the way of salvaging the season, but there's still a lot of unfinished business. There's still a third of your schedule left, and another big road test with Clemson. And then, I mean, no game is off the table, in my opinion, because games that we've thought Marcus Freeman should win before, some of the easier ones, he lost last year. And so I think this is a huge stepping stone to the right place, but it's one game at a time. And I think USC springboards you to a really good position, assuming you take care of everything else on the back end.
Great point. I agree that it doesn't salvage the season by itself, because there's still 4 games to go after that that can really tank a lot of things, even if you beat USC, right? I mean, if you go on the road to Clemson and get your doors blown off, the USC game goes away.
Right.
I mean, it just does, right?
It's a wash.
You can't do that, right? Now, I think a win against USC going into the bye week, all of those things, it can springboard you to the possibility of running the table. And if you can do that, it's still a disappointment, because none of us would look preseason. Were any of us going to be happy with 10-2? I don't think so. That was the floor. And I was very clear that I was going to be disappointed with 10-2. That's the best they can do right now. You can still take a lot of positives out of 10-2 because of the teams that
you are right now.
Yeah, 100%. Because of the teams that you would have beaten. Now, you'll have probably an opportunity to win a New Year's Six bowl at that point if you're 10-2. I think that's a very real possibility. So there's a ton of positives that you can take out of this season going into next season, and then have a positive postseason. A positive offseason. Recruiting, all the things we know Marcus Freeman is really good at. So yes, as Jesse said, this is a stepping stone to a salvageable season, but it does not in a vacuum though.
Completely agree. Just beating USC doesn't salvage the season, but beating USC makes the season salvageable in the long run.
Yeah, it keeps you in the running for salvageable, right?
Yes, that's right. Because the only way to truly salvage this season is to win the rest of the games. They've got to finish 10-2.
Got to win out. You have to. You have to win out. And, they talk about every game being a one-game season to get through the college football playoff and all that. That still has to be the mentality. It is still a one-game season, one play, one life, whatever Marcus Freeman says. Like, that is still on the table at this point because, man, 10-2 sounds a hell of a lot different than 9-3.
Well, I was listening to the Wake Up the Echoes podcast earlier in the week, and it's the one that Freeman goes to directly after his press conference on Mondays, and he was quite literally asked, now that not that it's talked about quite often because of Marcus Freeman's focus on each game, but he's like, naturally when a team realizes they can't go undefeated and they can't make the playoff and that stuff, like, is it harder to get guys to want to play? Like, do the guys still feel the sense of urgency, even if like some of those bigger goals are kind of now off the table? And I thought his response was reassuring that, these guys, no matter the game or, what they're potentially playing for, they're in the moment of that game at hand, and they're all gamers, and that, they understand the circumstances of still playing USC, still playing at home, it being a crazy environment, the recruits that are all going to be there. Like, so I guess overall what I'm trying to get at is, even though that those things are off the table, I still feel like this team is going to play like those things aren't or are no longer on the table, right? Like, there's still going to be that, like, that fire and passion amongst everyone on the football team to still win these games.
So when we look at USC, I mean, it's pretty much about Caleb Williams, as Jesse has pointed out earlier this week. It's not just Caleb Williams, but let's be honest, it's mostly Caleb Williams because the guy has 22 touchdown passes, only one interception. He's number 1 in the country in passing efficiency as the quarterback, number 9 in the country in yards per completion at over 15 yards per completion. And the biggest thing with him is the mobility, his ability to extend plays. He only ran for 35 yards last year against Notre Dame, but he extended plays with his legs, kept making throws downfield. Al Golden came out with 3 down linemen last year, and Austin Jones ended up running for over 150 yards against the Irish. As a result, I doubt we will see that same kind of philosophy this week. Yeah, no kidding. Marcus Freeman asked this week about the pass rush on Caleb Williams.
Continue to trust your pass lanes, trust your rush lanes, and know that the play is never over, right? There's a lot of times when you're playing quarterbacks where if you get them to step up, if you force them to a lane, sometimes you feel like, hey, he's going to either take off and run or he's going to, throw it out of bounds, but Caleb Williams finds a way to continue to extend plays. And so we have to be controlled but aggressive, right? Controlled aggression is what we talk about in our rush lanes, but understand the play is never over with Caleb Williams. You have to continuously play through the whistle. The minute you think he's running one way, you better be alert because he can turn around and run the other way. And so we can't play prevent defense. I told those guys we have to be aggressive, but we have to understand the rush lanes that we're rushing in and also understand some of his escape routes. And that's something that we've been working on.
Been working on it. Kenny Minchie has been the main scout team quarterback this week for the Irish. Chase Ketter has done a little bit of it as well, but mostly Kenny Minchie. Notre Dame's got the number 15 scoring defense, the number 4 pass efficiency defense, number 12 total defense. The big question, how are they going to defend Caleb Williams in this USC offense this weekend?
I just want to comment on his comment right there.
Sure,
and
Go ahead.
The only thing that worries me a little bit about what he said is we've got to stay in our lanes and we got to do that. Like, you got to turn the defensive line loose, though. Like, I don't want the whole like gap control just kind of standing there.
I mean, that's when their defense has been the best. Is when
let them go, man.
Yeah, let Howard Cross and Riley Mills just go.
Yes, and you have to be careful. You still have to keep your lanes, and you have to do all of that, and you can't. You still have to set the edge, and all of those things, all of those cliche yet important things on defense that you have to do. But let those guys loose, man. Don't make them stay back and stay passive just to keep their eyes on him. You know what I mean? Like that's the only thing that I'm tentatively worried about what he's saying there.
Good point.
Like, let those guys go. That's the only chance they have, in my opinion. You got to get him off platform. He's still really good off platform, but you got to get him moving and don't make them comfortable.
Vince, this might be the smartest thing you've ever said on this podcast.
Because rolling.
Because I know, like I can't agree with you more. Of the philosophy isn't, it doesn't need to be so micro on Caleb Williams and his ability as a runner and everything else that goes around it. Because he's going to make plays. He's going to escape here and there. Those things are naturally going to happen. I mean, he's the Heisman and potentially going to win the Heisman again this year, right? Like those things happen. But what you have to focus on is finding ways just to make him get the ball out quick. Get pressure in his face. Yep. Now, don't worry about getting him down. Don't worry about him potentially escaping. Those are all things that happen after the play. Once the play is broken down, you need to focus on what are you doing to disrupt Caleb Williams pre-snap and then at the snap of the ball. Disrupt the things that he can't control. He can set the offensive line, but he can't block for himself, right? So what is Notre Dame doing up front to disguise stunts, to disguise covers that come off of those stunts? And again, just getting in his face, get a hand up, make him just get the ball out early, make him uncomfortable, because if you mess up his timing, he can't do anything. No matter how great you are, if the route's not there, the route's not there. And that's what Notre Dame needs to focus on in terms of limiting Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, the way to keep him from extending plays is just what you're talking about. Make him get rid of the ball much sooner than he wants to get rid of the ball. That's the way to do it. And I think that it starts with a guy like Howard Cross right up the middle in his face.
Stunt him,
much
man.
as possible. Yeah, they're like, look at how disruptive Howard Cross has been these last couple of games. And I think that can be a key. And they can do some of that other stuff like they were doing against, like Riley Leonard a couple of weeks ago, with some of the stunts and sliding Riley Mills out and doing some of those things. But they need to, we'll talk about Sam Hartman and letting him cook here in a minute. They need to let that defensive line cook. And I think that's one of the biggest keys on Caleb Williams in this whole game is what those guys are potentially able to do.
Yep. Agreed. And it just worries me though, that soundbite, it's got me on edge a little bit, Sean. Oh man, I don't know.
Well, like you said, we can't just play prevent, which says you can't sit there and be passive.
That's true. Good point.
But again, does that apply up front as well? Like where's the give and take? Because it just, again, with this defensive minded head coach, there definitely is a more sort of conservative approach at times than you would have thought. Especially, like if you go back to Marcus Freeman in his 1 year as defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, the way things started off, he wasn't just a conservative type guy. Like he was aggressive, and it cost Notre Dame.
Yes, it did.
From time to time. Yep. But he's also learned his lessons, I guess, as we've talked about. And so, like, how much do some of those moments maybe stick in his mind? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. And again, like, I think we're all, it's like a little, we've talked about BK PTSD. We're just a little PTSD, I think, these last couple games, the way they've played out and just some of these things that we've seen. But the other side of this for this matchup is Sam Hartman has been, with the exception of last game, he's really, I guess, the last two, but I mean, the last one being the worst with all the interceptions, obviously, but he's been a really good quarterback himself. Number 16 pass efficiency quarterback in the nation, and he's number 17 in terms of yards per completion. So we know this is a guy who can throw the ball and who can get the ball downfield. And when you match him up against this, like when you look at the numbers of this USC defense, 109th in total defense, 89th in pass efficiency defense, 90th in rushing defense, 76th in scoring defense. And then you keep going, 112th in missed tackle rate. Like people think that Notre Dame struggles to tackle.
Seriously.
112th. They're 85th in yards allowed per play, 76th in points allowed per possession, and 90th in red zone efficiency. Like if Notre Dame can't get the offense going in this game, the rest of this
big red flags.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, big time.
Big red flags. If Notre Dame's offense struggles against USC, I'm telling you, this place is going to burn down.
And rightfully so, though, right? I mean,
100%.
Like, there's not going to be any excuses after this. Like, if you can't be efficient, and I mean, what are they averaging, about 20 points? Not even 20 points, like 18 points a game over the last 3 games, right? If you can't put points on the board, man, and we're talking, you're going to have to probably score 35 plus. Can we at least agree on that?
Yeah. I said 34 on Thursday. So.
Okay. So we're right in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So if you can't put those kind of points on the board, you have no prayer of winning this game.
I agree.
And that's not even saying anything about, the defense, because I think the defense has played well. I mean, you put the numbers out there, where would you want them to be strong? Pass rush, pass efficiency defense, right? And they are strong there. But Caleb Williams is still going to score points, guys, and it's not over until the fat lady sings, as they say, until his 000s on the clock, whatever end of the game cliche you want to use. Like, as long as he's got the ball and he has a chance to score, they can put points on the board. So you need to score, man. And so they're going to have to be incredibly efficient with their drives. Incredibly efficient.
Jesse brought out some good whiteboard offense stuff on Thursday's show. And one of the things that we talked about is, like, he brought up a great point. Like, you just gave Jordan Faison a scholarship. Like,
right.
You've committed a full scholarship to him now.
Mm-hmm.
And really, Faison and Chris Tyree are the 2 fastest receivers they have on the team right now, especially considering, so many other guys are still dinged up by hamstrings and stuff like that. And you don't know exactly what they're going to be able to give you. Getting those 2 guys on the field at the same time, like I know that they're both slot receivers, but as he said, you run twins on each side. You go 2 by 2 where you've got each of them in the slot. There's a lot you can do with that.
That's a really, really good point. And I also would say this, Sean, who have the most productive receivers been for Notre Dame
this year? Whether it's a tight end or a true slot receiver.
So you know what I'm doing? Some of those slot guys, I'm teaching them how to play on the outside so I can get multiple of those guys on the field, right? I mean, we've all either coached an offense or played in an offense or whatever. I don't think it would take that much to kind of get some of these guys acquainted with the outside, okay? I think that's a massive coaching point for this week. How can we get Chris Tyree, maybe Jaden Greathouse, because they have the most experience. I know I'm saying a true freshman and experience, but if you're talking about Jordan Faison, I mean, those 2 have more, right? You take those 2 guys who have been on the field all year, and you work with them a little bit on the outside, and you let Jordan Faison play a little bit in the slot. Can you imagine all 3 of those guys on the field at the same time?
No, I know. And the reason, like, I don't think we know exactly where, what the health of Greathouse's hamstring is.
That's fair too.
Right now. So,
and you don't want to rush him back, because then if he injures it again, he's going to be out for even longer. I mean, that's how a hamstring is. I mean,
I just think the biggest overall point that you were getting at is if you're gonna bring Faison on scholarship, that's a big deal.
Use him.
You need to use him.
Use him.
And so, what benefits him the best? Having him and Tyree in the same grouping together on the field at the same time. Whether one of those guys on the outside, whether they're both in the slot. I think those 2 guys are at their best when they're on the field together, because it's a pick your poison of if you want to use both of them to go, kind of blow off the top, and then use like Evans and Thomas underneath on some of the shorter stuff. You put a safety in a bind. You're gonna commit over top, or you're gonna commit down low. Someone's gonna be open. There's going to be a one-on-one matchup with one of those speedsters. So I think that's the best way to get them on the field and truly utilize their skill set.
Yeah, agreed.
Completely agree. Hopefully we see that. I'm just very nervous about what we're going to see offensively, because I never would have thought we would have seen what we saw last week, which makes every week a new adventure now the rest of the season, I think. Guys, are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm always ready, baby.
All right. So we've got rain in the forecast for this Saturday night, Notre Dame and USC, and Marcus Freeman talked a little bit about that this week.
And wet ball drills, obviously, throughout the season. But, this week, too, included. We in special teams, we try to make sure we're using a wet ball. And it's for those specialists, but also for the returners. And so we've done some things to make sure that they are able to, execute their assignment with a wet ball. And That might be spraying the ball, making it wet, or continuously trying to distract returners in different ways to catch a wet ball. And so we've addressed it Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll do it again today.
Now, he mentioned spraying the ball because the way he was asked the question, you've probably seen the video of USC coach spraying a punt returner with a hose or whatever, one of those pumps, as he's catching ball. That's how the question was kind of posed about spraying it. Wet weather, does either team benefit out of this weekend if it is wet and cold out there?
I'll tell you who should benefit. It should be Notre Dame, because they have a better in the trenches physical offensive line, a way more physical run game. And I mean, that's Audric Estime's game right there, baby. Some run, downhill, smash mouth football, working off some of the pass game a little bit when you need it. I think it definitely benefits Notre Dame. It should benefit Notre Dame. But hey, I've after the last 2 weeks, it's like, should anything happen anymore?
I mean, yeah, you nailed it. Like, it should benefit Notre Dame. Notre Dame wants to run the ball, and then throw it over your head kind of a situation, right? In an ideal world. And, bad weather benefits a run team. And we know that USC is not a run team. They want to throw it all over the yard. They want to put the ball in the hands of Caleb Williams and make him be the guy. And so it should benefit Notre Dame, but we're living in like bizarro world Notre Dame. So I don't know if it will benefit Notre Dame at this point. It should, but will it? That's a really good question. It should benefit them.
Yeah. And how much it rains is going to be a thing. Cause was it Ohio State? Was there some rain coming down the Ohio State game?
Yeah, I feel like
a little bit
towards the end.
It was, I don't know that it really affected anything, but there was a little bit.
Yeah. Obviously it started raining against North Carolina State. Notre Dame ended up, coming out on top in that one because they ultimately ran the ball better.
Mm-hmm.
But you're absolutely right. This should be a benefit to Notre Dame because even though it hasn't been that cold here yet, it's still, where we are. It's colder weather area.
And
the fact
how those USC guys, they're gonna come out with their big head, like the head. You're only gonna be able to see their eyes, and like
their thermals on.
They'll be out there with no shirt on too in warm-ups at the same time.
Just be like,
no shirt, but the face thermal.
Right. Just welcome to the Big Ten, fellas. Like, you're gonna have to get used to this.
That's right. Good point.
It's not even the worst of it. Ask Boston College about last year.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Gosh.
Days where I'm very happy to be in the press box.
Yep. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame is one of 4 teams in the nation that have played 7 games at this point.
I'm going to keep this one simple. It's an administrational error. It's something like this. Shouldn't. I just made up a word. I don't know. I feel like in these circumstances, you're allowed to make up words. But for real, it is an administration error. That whoever put this schedule together, and I know I've talked about this a little bit with some like friends earlier in the week. Like, you don't know what Duke and Louisville are going to be preseason, but sandwiching those teams between, those are still tough road ACC Power 5 matchups.
You also don't know they're going to end up being night games.
Right.
That's
and then sandwiching them between Ohio State and USC on the back of, your 8th game and it's barely into October. I think that's just bad administrational scheduling. And it's just bad that there's 4 games left and they're going to have 2 bye weeks.
Not administrational. Administrative. Mr. Math,
Whatever.
Mr. Engineer.
Oh my gosh. English.
I still stand on what I said.
Okay.
All right. So the question is fill in the blank. My fill in the blank is exhausting. And I'm going to say that I'm exhausted after 7 or 8 games in a row, with the last 4 being at night. I can only imagine what the kids feel like who are actually banging bodies into each other on a regular basis. You know what I mean? Like, my job is not as physically taxing as theirs, and I'm exhausted after the weekend, and it takes a few days to recover. For me, I can only imagine what it's like for them.
I will say this. I mean, like when you were in high school, you played a night game every week, Now, granted, you didn't have the same kind of travel, but sometimes you get on the bus, you got to go somewhere. I mean, that's
a good point.
That's still something.
That's a good point.
I do think it's a little bit overblown. I think that this stretch with the quality of opponents that they've faced and the fact that they have all been night games has maybe taken a little bit more toll. But again, you don't know going into the season that's how this whole thing is going to shape up. You don't know that Duke and Louisville are going to end up being ranked and unbeaten and all that stuff at the time, and that you're going to have, all the extra hype with game day and back-to-back weeks and those kind of things. This is not the first time Notre Dame has ever opened a season with 8 straight games. I've seen it kind of pointed out. Historically, it's happened before. And then even last year, even though they didn't open up with 8 straight games, they played a stretch of 8 straight games after they had a bye week, I think, in week 4. And then they went from BYU through the end of the season against USC. That was 8 straight games. So it's not like they've never played 8 straight games before either. I just think it's getting blown up a little bit, just, cosmetically, just because of the way things have ended up looking the last couple of weeks. I think it's
so you're saying if these aren't lost, if they don't lose to Louisville, everyone's like, oh, it's not a big deal.
Here's the other 3 teams that have opened up with 7 straight games. One of them has actually played their 8th game already. Louisiana Tech, like you think things are tough for Notre Dame. Louisiana Tech opened up with 7 straight games. Then they had to play this past Tuesday, and they lost this past Tuesday. They played on a Tuesday, and I don't know if they played like on a Friday or Thursday or something the week before, to kind of
Tuesday.
They played this past Tuesday, and they're going to play next Tuesday as well. Or it's either next Tuesday or their bye week.
Tuesdays.
So Louisiana Tech has already played 8 games, and they played on a Tuesday. Well, I don't know if you knew this, Vince, but starting last week, there's a stretch. It's like 54 consecutive days going up until the end of the regular season with college football, like through Thanksgiving weekend. And so
really,
there are Tuesday games now. There are even Monday games. Actually, let me check
just
that.
Football in general,
not just college football,
NFL,
but NFL
and college.
included.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that means there's Tuesday and Wednesday games.
Yes.
That's the point
and
you're making.
Thursday. Yes.
Because there's been Thursday games for a long time. I think the Big Ten has dipped their toe into that.
Louisiana Tech played this past Tuesday, October 10th.
Ridiculous. Tuesday games.
Yes.
Wow. That is nuts.
They lost to Middle Tennessee. Louisiana Tech is 3-5. Ooh. And they're going to play again on Tuesday the 24th. So they'll actually get their bye, but then they'll get another Tuesday game. Yeah.
But
yep.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Tuesdays.
My point is, it could be now. Notre Dame is never going to play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday games.
Of course,
but still, it could be worse. Than having to open up with 8 straight games if you're Notre Dame. You could be Louisiana Tech and playing 8 games with one of them being on a Tuesday.
Do you know who the other teams are that have played 7, or am I putting you on the spot?
No, I've actually got the list. UMass and Vanderbilt are the other 2.
And they are, obviously, Vanderbilt doesn't have a great record.
Right. UMass doesn't either.
Okay. So I wonder if they're complaining about the fact that they played with no bye. I'm just curious. I'm serious. I wonder if the stink is as loud as it is for us. You know what I mean?
Good question. Because on their own little chat boards,
within their community of podcasting.
How can Clark Lee let this happen?
Right, exactly.
I'm in Bandyland.
Right. No, absolutely.
I don't know if it's. To me, there's more to it. It's the cocktail of how everything else kind of shook out.
Sure.
In terms of who those teams were, and
that's what I think this 4-game window at the back end of this has really
that's more so amplified
all of this.
Yes,
just
agreed.
Because they've all ended up being night games, and Duke and Louisville, which could have been
they're all undefeated teams too at game time.
Yeah, exactly. Undefeated and ranked.
Right. Yes.
2 years ago, both of those teams would have been pushovers. This year, they're both good.
Yeah. And these schedules are made
crumbles.
years in advance. And so now the only thing that changed is they added the Tennessee State game, obviously, within the past year. And so that botched up the bye schedule and all of those different things. And so,
and that's part of this as well. It's not like Notre Dame was overly taxed in those early games.
That's a very good point. It's as Jesse liked to say, it's the cocktail at the end here, the cocktail of events It's 100% accurate. I mean, that's
administratively.
Correct.
Ha ha ha.
The administrative cocktail.
Yes. But they got a lot of guys in against Tennessee State. They got a lot of guys in even against Navy and
Central Michigan.
So they were able to get some rest
Yeah,
out of that. So
they were.
Like I said, I think just the cocktail is the biggest thing.
Yes.
Cocktail effect. Who knew? Fill in the blank. An 8-4 record for Notre Dame this season would be blank.
An 8-4 record. Go, Vince. Go.
Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. You can't lose 2 more games, and if that does happen, then Marcus Freeman is 100% on the hot seat going into year 3. Not saying that he's going to get fired. Not saying they're actively looking for a replacement, but there's a hell of a lot of pressure on year 3 if he comes out of the season 8-4. A hell of a lot of pressure. So that's the definition of a hot seat.
Notre Dame would be seen, an 8-4 season would be seen as a regression, in my opinion, considering an 8-4 record last year. It's Marcus Freeman's second year. He got better at the toughest position in college football, the position that has the most influence on the game, and that's quarterback. He's got a second-year defensive coordinator. He's got, offensive line talent galore. It's just everything is better this year. And so to have the same record as last year is just a complete regression, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it would be completely unacceptable to have Sam Hartman as your quarterback compared to what you had last year at quarterback and end up with the same kind of record. Now, the only defense would presumably be, this would be assuming 8-4 means losses to USC and Clemson and not like to Pittsburgh and Stanford, for example. Because if that happens, if they were to beat USC and Clemson, but lose to Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, or Stanford, you talk about, what you came from and what your goals were with a new quarterback and everything coming into this season. And it piggyback on what you were saying, Vince, the fact that it would put him on the hot seat next year. Let's not forget he's going to have a new athletic director next year, not the athletic director who hired him.
You're not my guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that is exactly right. That is always a thing. I think you become under the microscope even more when a new boss takes over the job and you're not performing up to standards, especially when it's Notre Dame and you are negotiating arguably the most important TV contract in the history of the program in this window.
Good call. That's a point I didn't even think about, to be honest with you, the new athletic director. That's a really good point. 8-4 going in and let's just say that they lose to USC and Clemson, right? So that means you're 0-3 against the big 3 that were on the schedule this year. That's unacceptable.
And you're 0-2 against USC in your career.
Absolutely. That is incredibly unacceptable if you're at Notre Dame, right? And so, there's going to be a lot of yelling, not whispers, yelling about the state of the program at that point. It's going to make for a very, very long offseason, and then you're starting a brand new quarterback on the road to Texas A&M. Yep. So, it doesn't get easier. That's the thing. It does not get easier. So, man,
buckle up, baby.
Would be tough. That would be really, really tough.
That's why I'm telling you, this game has a potential sway and Marcus Freeman and the program's direction going forward.
Absolutely.
So with 2 losses this season, does Notre Dame have any chance to make the college football playoff?
I'm not wasting a lot of no.
You're not wrong. I say no as well. And I just don't see a path. There was plenty of naysayers at 1 loss for Notre Dame saying that there's no way they're going to get in because of the conference champions and all of those other things. If this was next year, then you still have a chance with the 12 team, right? You still have a chance. I
don't even think they're under consideration. I really think that the overarching, selection committee, Notre Dame not in a conference, 2 losses. I just think it's an automatic no. Literally, I don't even think it's given consideration. There'd
There's
have
no
to
chance. There's never been a 2-loss team make the playoff.
be, let alone a team like Notre Dame, who
Right.
everyone complains about the non-conference thing.
They're 21st. I mean, they're 21st in the AP poll this week, right? That would be one heck of a move up into the top 4. Like,
I think if they win out, they can end up around, in the top 10 or 12. But
Sure,
there's no
and
way
that's
they're
New
going
Year's
any
6.
higher than that.
That's New Year's 6.
That's exactly right there.
I think
Right.
that's they're destined. If they're 10-2, they're destined for one of those New Year's 6 bowls, which is fine. Like okay.
Because Vince, so what about if they go 10-2, Louisville and Ohio State run the table undefeated conference champions? How do you feel about that in that scenario?
I feel like you can not explain away, but you can at least have some good feelings about.
You can feel
who
better
they lost
about it.
to.
Yeah,
exactly. And if they go win that elusive New Year's 6 bowl that they haven't won since 1993, yet you have another thing that can be a positive, right?
So I think that could be a big monkey off Freeman's back if he can get that. I know it's way down the road, but that'll help his cause a big amount.
That means we're rooting for Ohio State over Michigan and all of those different things,
Yeah.
It would also sting because going back to 2 years ago when their only loss was to Cincinnati, who ended up making the playoffs. So like if that happened, and Cincinnati and Ohio State and Louisville both get in, it's like you were
right there.
You were in position. Yep.
Had your destiny in your own hands, and you ended up with a handful of poop.
Yep.
Poo-poo.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Fox's Big Noon Kickoff is coming to Notre Dame for the first time this weekend.
It's a yawn for me. That's just personally though. Like I'm
not excited to see Urban.
No,
your boy Urban coming back to town.
The only thing that's got me excited is to see Brady Quinn fired up on campus for the USC rivalry. I think there's something to that. And again, this just goes back to preference. I know people, enjoy the Fox show over some of the other ones. I'm just more of a game day guy by nature. It's just what I've done for a long time. I get more excited for the game day stuff. So it's just, and especially at this point, we've already done 2 game days. I feel like, Fox is kind of quote unquote the knockoff on game days. So it's like, it's already the 3rd one this season and it's at noon. I don't know. It's just, I'm not quite feeling it at this point. It'll be fun. Like there'll be cool aspects to it, but I'm just not feeling it as much as I have in the past with like game day and just even earlier in this season.
It's anticlimactic, I would say. I was surprised that they went, and yet not surprised because of the Brady Quinn, Matt Leinart, connection.
True. See, I didn't even think about that. I was only thinking about Quinn, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I get it. You know
Especially
what I mean?
if Reggie Bush was still around.
Right. No, that's true too. But so I see it. I'm sure that they had this one circled because of who's on their show and, all of those different things. And it makes sense. I get it. But game day was there 2 weeks ago. I didn't go out of my way to go check it out or anything. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I watched some of it on TV. That'll probably be the case this time around. I didn't know they were giving away thousands of dollars for kicking field goals. I would have pushed my kid right up in front. Like, hey, he's never done it before. Let's get some money.
Dang, that's a good point, Vince. You were all on that. You were slacking that day. What's going on?
No, I did not know, man. I would have made that, man. But
is
anyway,
that nepotism?
I mean, I don't care what it is as long as the check clears. But it's anticlimactic because of what happened against Louisville. You know what I mean? It's like, why are we celebrating this right now?
It's just another thing to get through to the game. Like I'm more so concerned about the weight of the game itself. It's another hoop to jump through to get to the game.
I mean, there's definitely not nearly as much excitement because game day is still the standard and it's been here. And there was so much, the hoopla was so different for Ohio State. I mean, Marcus Freeman opened up the week talking about, hey, game day and Pat McAfee's going to be here. Right. He hasn't said anything. He didn't say anything about Big Noon Kickoff. He didn't even say, hey, it's going to be cool to see Brady Quinn come back or anything like that, which I think that is the cool aspect when you get them in. And this will be the first time they've been here. So there's still, something cool to it. But I agree. They announced it before the Notre Dame Louisville game, for one thing, which I guess maybe they kind of have to. But at the same time, the whole thing lost some luster when Notre Dame lost to the Cardinals last week. So it's
totally did.
Just kind of, okay, it's here. All right, let's do some props. Did you guys build a 3-leg parlay? I don't think Vince probably has had the chance to. He's had some other stuff going on.
I think you know the answer to that.
Here's mine. So I've got the game going over 60.5 points. I've got Sam Hartman over 2.5 touchdown passes. And I've got Hartman over. I went a little alternating yardage. I went over 225 yards, 225 plus yards for Hartman. I don't feel confident enough in any of these other individual props that we're going to talk about. So I went all in on Hartman in the game point total.
Yeah, you did.
Listen, I've been in California the last 7 days. You know what you can't do in California? You can't legally bet.
Can't bet on sports.
And so, you know what I did? The first thing I did when I landed this morning, I got off that red-eye jet. I logged into FanDuel, baby. They know I've been gone for a while. They gave me a deposit match. I got a $50 free bet, and immediately I placed that within like 30 minutes, and it was Audric Estime anytime touchdown. It was Sam Hartman 225 yards, and it was Sam Hartman 2+ passing touchdowns. I think that's a lock. And I think if you want Notre Dame to win and you believe Notre Dame's going to win, those 3 things have to happen.
Okay.
I like those. I like all of those. You know what? I'm going to go off the rails here just a little bit. I'm going to go with a Jeremiah Love anytime touchdown. I'm going to go with an Audric Estime anytime touchdown.
Ooh, okay.
I will take Sam Hartman over 2.5, and I will also take Caleb Williams over 2.5.
So man. So we're going
4-legger, baby.
Man, give him that extra juice, Vince.
4-leggers. I like the pluses. I like get those pluses up there, so my $5 bet makes me more money.
Well, and it's interesting because Hartman's over-under is 2.5 touchdown passes, just like Caleb Williams.
But it's plus money, baby.
But, yeah, like the last couple of weeks, his over-under has only been 1.5. Yeah. So it's up. I guess, again, like Notre Dame is favored, -2.5 in this game.
I'm afraid of that one, though. I'm afraid of that one. I didn't touch that one with a 10-foot pole.
Won't touch it.
The weather concerns me just a little bit with the over-under number for total points. I still think a bunch of points are going to be scored. I just, the weather forecast just makes me want to stay away from it. But I get where you're coming from.
And I went over on the Notre Dame Ohio State game, and it was well under as well.
Sure. Yes, it was.
Here's what's interesting about Caleb Williams. His passing yard total opened at 291.5. The over/under.
Big number.
Overnight this week, it bumped up 8 yards. It went from 291.5 to 299.5. So apparently a lot of money going in on the over at 291.5 on Williams.
Man, I don't know. That's going to be tough. I mean, I really, really like Notre Dame's pass defense, and obviously they've done a great job all season, but man, just Caleb Williams is that good. You know what I mean? He is that good, and he's going to get his, as the kids say. And so you might want to take the over. It's just, I think he'll be productive, which is why I took the touchdown passes as opposed to the yards.
Lock that in for the under. He's not getting 300 passing yards.
He has gone under that total 3 times this season. 219 in a triple overtime game against Arizona last week. He went for 278 against San Jose State and 281 against Stanford. Now, the other side of that, 403 yards against Colorado, 322 against Arizona State, 319 against Nevada.
See, the ones I look at is like the against Arizona State, but 322, like that's against Arizona State. And I would just flat out say, without even really looking at it, Notre Dame's secondary is way better than Arizona State's. And then what I also would look at is he went for 400 against Colorado, and Colorado's defense is subjectively very bad. So like, I wouldn't mind rolling the dice on this under, because that's just a lot of yards, and he's only done it a couple times, and the 2 times that he has done it was San Jose State and Stanford, and it's like those were blowout wins, right? So he probably came out of the game early.
Yeah, and the fact that he went under against Arizona last week is shocking as well. I think I really don't want to touch this, but if I did, I do think I like the under a little bit.
I get it. And
Going
the
up
weather
against Notre
again
Dame's defense.
could potentially affect that. And if God forbid Notre Dame comes out to 3 front again, they'll definitely have the under. Just saying.
Scared straight, Vince
Yeah.
D'Addario. Audric Estime, over under 90.5 rushing yards and 8.5 receiving yards.
I don't
Surprised
care.
that Audric had a receiving yard point total or over under rather.
8.5 receiving yards. One screenplay and that's going to go over.
Yeah.
I mean,
I wish that was Jeremiah Love because I would definitely hit or take that one. I just don't know with Audric. I don't feel comfortable enough about it. But I do like his rushing. I see this as a game to get back on track and against a team that you can run against and get back on track.
Here's the number for you, Jesse. Number 112 missed tackle rate for USC.
There you go.
Who makes teams miss tackles more than Audric Estime?
Yeah. Give us the over.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Ring that bell, Vince. That was a great point. Ding.
Thank you.
Mitchell Evans. By the way, I like the over on the rushing total for Audric Estime as well. So I agree with you guys. Mitchell Evans, 62.5 receiving yards. Jaden Thomas, 33.5 receiving yards. You like both of them over?
I do. I think I really like what Jess was saying earlier. Now, granted, are they going to do it? I don't know. But like sending both your speedsters over the top, and you've got Evans and Thomas underneath, and they,
that's what I was thinking, Vince. If you could put Thomas on the outside and Greathouse on the outside and allow them to go underneath because Greathouse is hamstring, and then you rotate out Evans into one of those spots, maybe a little bit at some point too. It's like those guys should clean up down low, essentially.
Yeah, those numbers go up real fast.
Thomas has 40 total yards and 3 receptions in his last 2 games. Louisville and Ohio State. Now, he has been slowed down by that hamstring. He had 33 yards last week against Louisville.
But he didn't play the week before, so
give me the Thomas under and the Evans over is where I'm leaning.
Thomas under. You don't even think he's going to get 30 yards?
It's just so hit and miss with it. And I don't think he's got the big play in him. It's going to be a more of 5-6 yards. And it's going to take him 4 or 5 receptions. And the guys don't get a bunch of 4 or 5 reception games in this.
And offense. You notice they took Chris Tyree off the board this week.
Yeah, because it's one play on those. They have no. I got so mad. I was like, really? No Tyree? Those are the fun ones.
I know. One catch is all it takes.
Those props may be hit or miss, Jesse, but the problem is USC is mostly miss. So that's why I like it.
You're banking on that USC, baby.
I really am, and that's probably what's going to bite me in the butt at the end of the day. So
this is all the stuff that I thought last year as well.
I know.
And
yeah,
USC
you're right.
played the better defense, and that's what scares me about this game.
Look, there's nothing about this game and about this team right this second that I would bet the mortgage on. Nothing, run nothing.
What makes me feel better about this game, and someone pointed it out this week that I forgot, Cam Hart missed last year's game.
Yes, he did.
Remember that? He had the shoulder injury. But you've got the full complement in the secondary. You've got Thomas Harper back at nickel, and you obviously have Benjamin Morrison, and you've got Cam Hart. So you're in much better shape in the secondary in this game than you were for last year's game. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's going to be big. That's going to be big because they're going to have to play well.
All right, it's prediction time, guys. Who wants to go first?
I want you to set the tone. You go first.
Me?
Yeah.
Or him? Okay, yeah.
Me or Vince?
Go ahead, Jeff. Call it out.
Who is you?
The host of the show.
Okay, I was going to say there's 2 of us here. You keep saying you.
I know, right?
I always get confused. I'm like, should I call you Sean? Should I call you Dad? Both feel weird. You know what I mean?
You, host of the show.
Yeah, that's great. That was fantastic. You got to point at him like that guy.
Okay, so I do feel like this is a game that Notre Dame can win, but based on everything we've talked about in this show, I'm just not confident enough to pick them to win. So people might be, throwing stuff at their, screen right now if they're watching the YouTube, or they might, throw their phone down if they're listening, to the podcast, whatever it happens to be. I'm just not confident enough to say that Notre Dame will, because of what we've seen the last 2 weeks. I have no idea what the offensive game plan is going to look like.
Too many question marks.
Yeah. And as we've said, they've got to score points to be able to win this game. And I think that they'll score some points. I just don't know if they can score enough points. So I've got USC winning 35-30.
That's tough to come off.
And that's also USC scoring the least amount of points that they have scored this year. That 35.
Okay.
41 is the fewest that they have scored so far this season. So,
well, that's interesting that your research bodes that out or whatever. So I've thought about this for a while now. I haven't put anything on paper yet. So this is my first prediction at this point, because after we're done with the show, I've got to actually get my written prediction
Lock them in, baby.
Got to lock it in. So I got to make sure that whatever I say now, I'm going to lock in the predictions.
Double down, baby.
I know, right? But for me, I agree with a lot of stuff that Sean just said, and I don't know what to believe offensively, defensively. And the defense is more like, I feel confident in what the defense is going to bring to the table. I just don't know what Caleb Williams is going to bring to the table. And I know that he's really freaking good, right? Yeah. And he can make good defenses look bad. And so does the defense have the smarts and the players to shut him down? Yeah, they do. But will they? I don't know. Offensively, there's nothing I can hang my hat on right now. And that's my biggest issue, is I can't hang my hat on the run game. I can't hang my hat on the pass game. It's because of the offensive line and play calling right now for me. And so people can throw things at me too, I suppose, but I've got USC 42, Notre Dame 38.
Ooh.
Vince, this might be the first time in the history of Vince that I've seen you pick Notre Dame to lose. I don't know if it's what's been going on with Louisville, if it's what's been going on in the personal life.
Man, the last time I picked Notre Dame to lose was Ohio State. First game of the season last year, I think.
I am a man of the people, and I'm going to turn this situation around.
I hope you're right, dude.
I'm glad you two losers went first. So
whoa,
the winner,
shots fired,
man.
The winner of the trio can bring you the good news. And I'm not just throwing this out there to be a Boomer fan. I
think you're
legit
drafting.
Believe what I'm about to say right now.
Okay.
So I think the first step of this is you just got to remove Louisville and that taste from your mouth, right? I've removed it, and I've put Notre Dame and USC on paper, and I look at it from last year. Drew Pine led this team. Sam Hartman is better. The defense is better in a second year under Al Golden. This game is now at home instead of at USC. Caleb Williams' offensive line, subjectively not as good as it was last year. His wide receivers, subjectively not as good as last year. Defense, one of the worst defenses in every category on paper. I just think that Notre Dame has taken the steps in the right directions and some of USC's deficiencies, and this game is at home, 37-34. Notre Dame wins this game.
Hey, man, a lot of what you said is accurate, but do you know what Drew Pine's stat line was for the USC game last year?
It wasn't horrible.
It was 23 of 26 for 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He may be the only guy that played well in that game.
One interception and 1 fumble. Don't forget the fumble.
That's true.
Because it was a key fumble.
Good point. Very, very good point. Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
But, I mean, we can throw Drew Pine under the bus for a lot of things. I don't know if it's for that game necessarily. I'm just saying.
Fair.
All right. We shall see. Hopefully 2 of the 3 of us are wrong, and we're talking about it next week.
Believe me, I would be more than happy to be wrong. More than happy. You will see me.
I just can't believe I've seen this day. I think this is like one in the 2 times in like forever.
I don't know. I think I'm just depressed.
My gut wanted me to figure out a way to pick Notre Dame this week. But again, I'm too confused based on what we saw.
Yeah,
last
exactly.
week.
I'm as rose-colored as the next guy where I want Notre Dame to win. You know, I'm a fan first. Obviously, we try to throw the analyst hat on and try to, see things the way they're supposed to be seen. But I just can't find that thing to hang my hat on offensively.
Yeah.
I just can't find it where I'm just like, that's going to happen.
Right.
That is going to happen. I don't know. I can't get Louisville out of my mouth there, Jesse. It's right here.
Bourbon. Fine. Drink another bourbon. You're going to find it down in Louisville.
Going to kill it off.
All right, guys. Good show as always. Always have fun with you. I hope everyone enjoys the game. Hopefully it's one that we can all enjoy.
Here's hoping.
And then we'll get to hibernate for a week next week with bye week. And I tell you what, like, I've drank more coffee this week. I am running on fumes right now. Like,
there's no doubt about it. I've got nothing left.
Oh, to be 22 again and be able to do it like these guys are able to do it every week.
You're not kidding. Or even just to be his age.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Good stuff. We will talk. There won't be a countdown, of course, next week because there's not a game, but we've got IB Nation. We've got the big show, Driscoll and Ryan and everybody else next week. So, of course, we'll still be here talking Notre Dame football during the week, and we will talk to you then. Enjoy the game.